Y'all remember when Skechers, yes, that Skechers, made a Nicktoon? Y'all remember when they got investigated by the FCC over it? Hi, I'm Jordan, and welcome to an interesting little rabbit hole. Today, I will tell you the tale of a short-lived Nickelodeon show called Zevo 3. Zevo 3, a show that wants to tell the story of three teenagers who deal with everyday teenage problems as well as superhero problems, because they also, well, are superheroes. On top of all of that, the series was simultaneously one big advertisement for shoes. But not just any shoes, no, we are talking exclusively about Skechers, baby. You know, the shoe company that everyone thought was spelled with a T in it, but not anymore since the timelines collided. Like, hello, they would sponsor Nickelodeon's best game show Figure It Out. Like, where have you been? It's Skechers.
Skechers, it's the S.
To be fair, I couldn't tell you the last time I owned a pair of Skechers. Could have been the 90s. Probably the early 2000s, but I don't know. The thought process was simple. Skechers wanted to branch out further than just footwear and apparel. They wanted to appeal to a younger audience in new and creative ways. So why not take something they love, cartoons and superheroes, and then somehow build this advertising world and universe around it? The first place to start was building in some brand recognition and bringing superhero characters based on shoes to life. Designing three main figures that would appear in actual commercials that each represented a specific type of shoe Skechers was marketing. Z-Strap, who advertised the Z-Strap Skechers shoes. Cool Breeze, who advertised Skechers Air Raider shoes. And Elastica, who advertised the Super Bungee Band Skechers shoes. And somehow all of this culminated in a Nickelodeon cartoon. Let's lace up or Z-Strap ourselves into our shoes and jump on into this.
Hold your applause, please.
So Skechers ends up developing a massive advertisement campaign that centered around these comic book style panels coming to life where we meet three distinct superheroes that all have to take on specific villains based on what their represented shoe is. Like, for example, Z-Strap would go up against a tangled mess of shoelaces, and thanks to Z-Strap taking care of the problem and being Velcro based, you may never ever tie your shoes again. At least that's what the commercial says.
You might never, ever tie your shoes again.
You know what? Sidebar with me for a moment. Tying your laces sucks. And I'm not saying that because I'm slower at tying my shoelaces than the average person or anything silly like that. I just don't care what a yellow talking sponge has to say. Oh, loop-de-loop, then pull, now your shoes are looking cool. Like, no, that's just too much effort.
Shut your mouth, you mediocre
content creator.
mediocre.
These commercials were all built around the rising superhero love that was heavily building throughout the 2000s in more mainstream ways, and their only original purpose at first was to be something that can sell you on wanting these shoes. But then the question of, what if it can be more than just that arose? So under Skechers, we have Skechers Entertainment stemming from this, who would focus on trying to take the brand in a venturous new direction by expanding out to the entertainment realm with these characters. So now it's 2010. Superheroes are getting more popular than ever. The mainstream films are getting more and more attention, and superhero cartoon shows are huge hits with young audiences. So it seemed like a no-brainer to try and tap into the entertainment landscape if they're seeing success in the shoe market with the commercials alone. Skechers Entertainment would end up linking with Scoop Entertainment and Maslin Entertainment to co-produce the series for Nickelodeon. Well, more specifically for Nickelodeon's sister channel, Nicktoons, for one season with 26 episodes. We wanted to create something fresh with Zevo 3 by combining teen angst with superhero adventures and a healthy dose of humor. The response we're getting from international buyers has convinced us that Zevo 3 is destined to be a global hit. Those comments come from Kristen Van Cott, the at the time VP of Creative Development for Skechers Entertainment and eventual executive producer of Zevo 3. So what is Zevo 3? Would the show just be a big glorified ad to sell sneakers to kids? Or would it at least try to be its own thing while still having an attachment to the sneakers brand to still ultimately sell you sneakers? The series itself is interesting because in all honesty, it's not that bad of a small little show. Sure, it is filled with all the superhero and teen tropes you can think of, but it really bakes in quite a bit of interesting plots and interesting characters that leave you feeling more so engaged in what's happening episode to episode than not. Just in general, it still feels competently made. The three main characters we follow here are Jason, Matt, and Ellie, and the lore that we get that leads these three to become superheroes is thanks to the Zevo compound, which is this chemical that ended up releasing out into the surrounding area of the city, and most people or animals who were exposed to it are affected by it negatively, and usually become monsters, or really I should say mutants. But some, our main three here, end up getting superhero-like powers thanks to being exposed to it. Now, yeah, you guessed it, they are the Zevo 3. Jason ends up becoming Z-Strap and has control over metal and can turn parts of his body into other metal objects. Ellie ends up turning into Elastica and her hair gains super strength to make her fly or lift heavy objects, and sometimes she makes it walk her around like she's Doc Ock. Lastly, her younger brother Matt ends up becoming Cool Breeze, and he gets the cool powers of ice. Together they end up fighting as a team to take down any mutant-related threats that pop up, and even worse, occasionally deal with their day-to-day teenage lives. Scary, I know. Thanks to the Zevo-related incident, the mayor in the show, who if you couldn't guess by just looking at him, is one of the main bad guys. And he ends up creating a new city here, one that ends up splitting the area into two, where New Eden City is meant to be for those pure of any effect of the Zevo compound, and is supposed to be built as this pure perfect city for him. And really, it's just a giant monument to his ego. And the other sectioned off part of the city now being known as Stankville. New Eden City is actually built upon the old city that was once known as Footsville, by the way. Just want to make sure that you know about all the feet-related things here in the series. It's still based off of a sneaker company ad campaign after all. Like here, for example, the other main villain of the series is named Stankfoot. But you know what makes him actually pretty special? He's voiced by Mark Hamill, so it was a nice surprise and a really solid performance. There was also some other standout characters, like another main villain that is tied into all of the madness named Dark Materia, who is essentially brought to life and created thanks to the fusion of the Zevo compound and dark matter. As well as there is the character of Bug, who is mostly full mutant, but it's really in how the character develops and builds a connection to the good guys that makes their journey throughout the series a big standout and highlight for me. In general, the series I think isn't half bad. I felt that there was a solid amount of treatment given to the development of the characters, especially villain characters and how they are both connected and affected by major important story elements. Like, I don't like the mayor or Stankfoot or Dark Materia, but for their backstories and the connections, it's really the tragedy of how their lives were changed and messed up, or how they came into existence, that really solidifies the interesting factor of the show. And it's all pretty well done, and I enjoyed this aspect the most as something that stood out to me that I went into the series not expecting. Plus, the three main characters give off a realistic dynamic of bonding and getting closer to one another as the series goes on, as when we see them at the beginning, they all have their own quirks that make them clash more than want to be around one another, which in itself is another trope that we've seen many times. They start off dysfunctional, but become a better solid unit as time goes on. But even through these tropes and cliches, the more time that was spent with them together, whether as themselves or as their superhero alter egos, it genuinely felt fun. Now, the show ends up feeling like a culmination of a bunch of other popular shows on the main Nickelodeon channel, and from the Nicktoons channel, making it feel right at home with the other programs it was placed next to. However, this can be a bit of a double-edged sword because, while that does work in its favor a good amount of the time, it also can feel too familiar to other properties that already do what this show offers and does it better. So you get left with a series that ends up feeling like a master of none, which isn't the worst thing ever, it just makes it feel slightly forgettable, and it makes sense that when bringing this show up to friends, the thing that gets them to remember it isn't the name Zevo 3, it's by saying, hey, remember the Skechers Nickelodeon cartoon? Which, funny enough, nicely ties into a lot of what we are jumping into today. As for the production and promotion of the series, they had John Massey, who created the characters in the first place, credited with being the creator of the show, as well as took aim at Nickelodeon being the perfect place to host the show, thanks to them being the #1 fastest growing kids network at the time that also offered other superhero shows at the time, which Skechers definitely wanted Zevo 3 to be around, like Wolverine and the X-Men, Fantastic Four, The World's Greatest Heroes, and Iron Man Armored Adventures. Before the series would premiere on Nicktoons, Skechers wanted to get the word out there as best as they could, and one of their marketing strategies had them including a promotional sneak peek DVD of the series within 1 million shoe boxes. I just gotta say that I think it's hilarious that in the press release it says, Skechers is supporting Skechers Entertainment's new animated kids television series. It's like me promoting my second channel and acting like it's not exactly me. Speaking of which, new video over there soon where I talk about the Pikachu version of the Pico. Most of you don't know what this is, do you? Good thing I'll have a video talking about it then, huh? Self-congratulatory handshakes all around, gentlemen. We will leverage the marketing and promotional power of the Skechers brand at retail to raise visibility of Zevo 3 in a truly impactful way. This promotion will generate brand awareness among the exact audience we need to reach. We are confident this will result in enhanced viewership once the series takes to the airwaves. That quote comes from Kristen once again, and there was brand synergy going on here, even if it technically all is the same brand synergizing with itself. And that's all fine and dandy. They wanted to market the show directly to their consumers in a natural way, much like this. Listen, gamer subs may not give you superpowers or make it easier for you to tie your shoes, but it will keep you focused, it tastes great, and you can save 10% off your purchase by using my code FRINGE at checkout. That's code FRINGE for 10% off your purchase every time you use it. By supporting gamer subs through the link down below or by using my code FRINGE, you are directly supporting the channel, so thank you so much. But when it comes to how Skechers was operating in general with having an entertainment division, there was a lot of pushback when it came to the legality of what they are doing. If it's even okay to market to kids in the way they were going about it, and would the FCC find something like Zevo 3 as breaking certain guidelines? Let's dive into this bit of a rabbit hole now. Before the series would even premiere, the advocacy group Campaign for a Commercial-Free Childhood urged the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, to look into and hopefully block the release of Zevo 3, citing that it would violate the Children's Television Act and federal limit of 10.5 to 12 minutes of commercial time during children's programming, as well as the FCC's requirement of clear separation between commercials and other content. So did the show that came to be because of selling sneakers to kids technically violate these guidelines? We'll find out after this commercial break.
Catch the next brand new episode of Zevo 3 on Nicktoons.
To elaborate on what these FCC guidelines are, the first one is self-explanatory. There can only be a certain amount of time given to advertisers through commercials for certain blocks of time surrounding programs, and the latter rule in regards to there being a clear-cut understanding that the program itself also isn't just an ad. Like, for example, if in the middle of an episode of Pokemon, Ash turned to the screen and said, "Don't forget to buy this radical new Pokemon action figure," that would be breaking the guidelines. Whereas the adventures of Ash in the series are their own thing, and during the commercial break, there can be an ad for Pokemon action figures, which would be separate enough to be considered fine. Or so you may think, actually. If we go by the FCC's guidelines for what host selling is, there is a thin line here that can be hard to interpret. According to fcc.gov, host selling is defined as separate from the commercial limits. Since 1974, the Commission has also required that advertising in children's programs be clearly separated from the program content. The goal of this policy is to help children distinguish between commercials and program content. There are three applications of this separation principle. 1. Bumpers between program and advertising content, with the example being "and now for a commercial break." 2. The host selling policy, which prohibits the use of program talent to deliver commercials, and 3. Program length commercials, which the Commission defines as a program associated with a product in which commercials for the product are aired. The biggest thing to determine and understand with this is what constitutes as an associated program, and I have found myself finding several contradicting meanings of this. I tried reaching out to the FCC directly through the appropriate channels to get some clarification, but I was either met with more confusion or not properly hearing back the answer I was looking for. So the worry was if this show, Zevo 3, was going to just be some sort of long ad for Skechers, or something that often over-promotes the sneakers. Without the show having premiered yet, the general public would have no clue if these claims and worries were real or not, but it would definitely be bad PR for Nickelodeon and Skechers if parents think that the show was specifically doing that, and worse PR if the FCC did investigate and found the show to be breaking said guidelines and ultimately blocked the show from airing. Skechers Entertainment VP Kristen, along with a Nickelodeon spokesperson, spoke up claiming that the show doesn't violate any of those rules or guidelines, and that in making the series in general, the team worked hard to ensure that the show conforms with FCC provisions. But can there truly be a separation if the main characters in the show all originated from commercials selling Skechers, regardless of any redesigns? The campaign for a commercial-free childhood really didn't believe so, saying the characters are inextricably linked to the specific lines of shoes they promote, which is a fair point to an extent. I mean, when you have a character whose name is Z-Strap in the series and is also the name of a real shoe that is being sold and is technically associated with that character, it kind of bleeds together a bit. Going further to label all of the main characters as potential issues, as in keeping all of the names the same from the commercials, brings in kids already knowing and associating them with the sneakers themselves. The advocacy group goes on to say that from the success of the shoe lines already, children often ask for the shoes by the name of the associated character rather than by the actual model name. This was a big enough pushback that the FCC would eventually launch an inquiry into the series, the people making it and the network hosting it. Nickelodeon would continue to fight back against any claims brought against them, the show, and Skechers by saying, as previously stated, we do not believe that the show is a program-length commercial, nor do we agree that its transmission would violate the Children's Television Act or any of the Commission's rules or policies. Now, an inquiry from the FCC doesn't mean a full-on investigation. Other factors would need to be discovered or brought to light that would fully cause that. The campaign for a commercial-free childhood were worried that this would be a slippery slope where if the FCC ruled in the favor of the show, that other brands or companies could come in and take advantage of this, claiming we could see stuff like Tony the Tiger or Ronald McDonald get their own cartoon. I guess they don't remember these cartoons, do they? Well, I do, so peep that video if you're curious, and no, they don't break guidelines. They were only available at McDonald's. Eventually, Zevo 3 would get some backup from the Association of National Advertisers, the American Association of Advertising Agency, and the American Advertising Federation, which are three separate entities, by the way. They came to the defense of Zevo 3 by saying, at its core, the petition wants Zevo 3 banned based not on the show itself, but based on the circumstances of its creation, and because Skechers may get an advertising boost from the mere existence of the show. The petition is based on the false premise that any animated characters with ties to products inherently constitute advertising, and that their presentation in children's programming automatically violates FCC commercial limits. Any attempt to separate popular fiction from the commercial world is both quixotic and damaging to the creative process. The examples they would use to provide emphasis to their points are based on how cartoon characters, or fictional characters in general, are used all of the time in separate advertising of products, toys, and more outside of the body of work that they are from, and this should be seen as no different. The only difference would be that the show's characters stem from the advertisements rather than the other way around. So then, what would the verdict be? Would the FCC fully investigate Zevo 3, or maybe would they clear it of any wrongdoing? Well, it was kind of neither. The FCC did in fact let Zevo 3 be, but not because they cleared the series and all was good, but rather they just didn't comment on it again. In fact, the whole entirety of the show would premiere on Nicktoons no problem, with the FCC never offering an update on their thoughts or findings, or well, anything. A lot of the concerns from the groups like the Campaign for a Commercial-Free Childhood or the Parents Television Council are from considering the efforts seen from the FCC as lackadaisical and insufficient. Quotes like, "It's another example of FCC priorities being out of whack and the entire commission not taking its responsibility to uphold the law seriously," as well as, "The law is not really being enforced. Clearly something's wrong," are being publicly made by these groups, as they have claimed to have sat down and met with FCC representatives multiple times. In this particular case regarding Zevo 3, this is where the importance of it all really ends. There were ongoing back and forth between these groups and the FCC in regards to if they're doing their job correctly or not. And the FCC at one point was kind of like, we actually do stop violations when we find them. And then we find them. It's funny because it's mentioned as them going, look, we have fined $1.5 million from well-known children's cable networks if we do find guideline violations. Which kind of feels like being back in school and there was that one kid who said he was dating someone but you wouldn't know him because they went to another school. Whatever the truth in these matters are, it's just interesting to dig through and read about them all. But yeah, that's really it then. It all apparently was left open-ended. But I'm not satisfied with a non-answer to all this. So I started to dig deeper and deeper and deeper. I started finding and reading through all of the documented FCC files related to the case, finding out even more behind-the-scenes information regarding it all. More complaints that had to do with ex-party communications not being disclosed and detailed properly, even if they actually were. Now, I'm not an expert in understanding a fraction of the jargon used within a lot of these documents, and I don't expect you to be either. But what was known on the outside and in the general public of, oh, maybe the FCC will look into Nickelodeon and Skechers because of the campaign for a commercial-free childhood, was, on the inside of it all, a much more headache-inducing mess that would include so much involvement from every party this matter concerned that there were 33 pages filled with over 1,000 filings that within each had their own varying amount of documents, comments, or information to go through. But in going through all of this, not only did I find out that this whole mess went on for over a year and a half longer than the show itself ran for, but I did in fact find the conclusion. We didn't hear anything further from the FCC about this, as on October 15th, 2012, the Campaign for a Commercial-Free Childhood, who originally submitted the petition, officially withdrew it, ending anything further in regards to the FCC looking into Zevo 3. The following day, on October 16th, it stated that the reason for the withdrawal is due to the fact that at this point in time, Nickelodeon was no longer airing Zevo 3. So there it is, an actual answer to what happened here in the end. Zevo 3, Nickelodeon, Skechers, and any other entity that was involved was not investigated officially by the FCC. And this all went on for so long that the show had ended a year and a half before a resolution was found. And to understand both sides here, yeah, there is some fair merit in worrying about a show like this just being one big advertisement. I think where that gets shaky is within the actual show itself, as it's presented as a show about superheroes, not about selling shoes to kids. There was enough adequate proof and information submitted by all the parties behind Zevo 3 that explicitly detail how they were in compliance with FCC regulations and guidelines. The aim was shifted back towards a campaign for a commercial-free childhood, stating they are ignoring all of the factors being presented, as well as every comment that was a part of the petition was just repeating unsupported allegations. The majority of what you will find in these filings is about 1,500 comments that would all follow the same complaint style. All before the show would even premiere, by the way, just putting that out there. Some were long-winded, some were short and sweet, and if you look through a bunch of them, they do oddly mention the same examples of Tony the Tiger and Ronald McDonald. And there's so much more to all of this that I ended up spending a long time with that I genuinely think is fascinating, but I don't want this to drag on. It is pretty funny to see stuff like some of the comics of these characters now scanned into the official filings, but at the end of the day, honestly, it seems like a pretty clear open and shut case with what was presented. And that clarity is that Zevo 3 legally did not break FCC regulations or guidelines. Is it weird that Skechers originally made a cartoon surrounding their shoe lines? Sure, but did the show itself blatantly or in any sort of hidden way try and sell you on buying shoes? No, it didn't. The original deal for Skechers Entertainment went so far to state that there would be no commercials for Skechers shoes. Even commercials that do not feature the characters from Zevo 3 will not be aired during that program. Neither the Skechers brand nor any specific Skechers products will be mentioned by the Zevo 3 characters during the show, and none of the characters will appear in commercial advertisements that are aired during Zevo 3. Thus, Zevo 3 does not violate the Commission's rules regarding program length commercials and host selling. CCFC's petition for a declaratory ruling should accordingly be denied. Again, for clarification on the host selling part, my specific clarification that I was looking for on it has not been truly answered, and this all relates to something again I'll mention here in a moment. But regardless, it seems that everyone working on Zevo 3 had their I's dotted and their T's crossed. So with that whole mess out of the way, let's pivot back to Zevo 3 and Skechers Entertainment in general. Due to the nature of the agreement for Nickelodeon, it was 26 episodes that they agreed to air for the first year of their licensing deal, and beyond that, if they were to order another season or rerun the show, other deals between the two would need to be made and agreed upon. But you and I both know that didn't happen. After the series came to an end in May of 2011, it just disappeared. It wasn't outright canceled, but from what I have gathered through through this whole ordeal behind the scenes with the campaign for a commercial-free childhood and the FCC, why would Nickelodeon want to make new deals to continue a show that could bring an incredible amount of issues, bad publicity in the headlines of articles, and some level of financial cost because of any work their legal team spent dealing with this? But how did Skechers feel about this? While the Zevo 3 brand in general came to an end, Skechers still had other plans for their entertainment branch. But rather than deal with more claims coming after them, they decided to pivot their approach a bit. While we saw some stuff like comics materialize that were surrounding these brands in general, Skechers Entertainment would end up producing a few straight-to-DVD projects produced by SD Entertainment. There was 2011's Heidi and the High Tops, the movie, that was centered around the company's Heidi High Top shoe line, as well as 2012's Twinkle Toes movie and 2016's follow-up Twinkle Toes Light Up New York movie, that both centered around the company's Twinkle Toes shoe line. As you could probably tell just by looking at these other productions, Skechers Entertainment not only pivoted from the making of a kids show on a TV network market, but also from the superhero market, as here they focused heavily on specifically the young girl market, before the company decided to no longer try their hand in the field of entertainment. Commercial-wise, they still had some other superhero-based setups for a few of their shoes, like Luminators, Mega Blades, and more. Heck, they even made a Minecraft ripoff shoe. I mean, come on, they knew what they were doing.
Chicken jockey!
At one point, after Zevo 3 had come out and redesigned the main three superheroes, Skechers would rebrand some of their shoes to now match the name and look of the redesign, using the actual look of the characters in the show in their commercials, and for example, just making it easier for the kids to ask for the name of the superhero as the shoe. So these are no longer the Skechers with the bungee bands, they are the new Skechers Elastica shoes. So they made a character based on a shoe and then based the shoe on the character they made that was based off the shoe originally. I think I got it. This is where the confusion based on certain wording of the host selling guidelines comes into play here specifically. But based on my own knowledge of just growing up and seeing commercials that definitely were directly tied into the properties I was watching, I am sure this was technically done in a legal way that fit said guidelines. But who knows? Well, the FCC knows, I guess. Either way, that is the end of the story for Zevo 3 and everything that went into the rabbit hole that happened behind the scenes. Doing this video was honestly some of the most fun I've had, getting a chance to really dig into what happened. As for you, I hope you have enjoyed joining on this adventure with me, and now I definitely want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on everything that happened? How do you personally feel about if there was any credence to the claims submitted against the series or not? And of course, if you've seen Zevo 3, what are your thoughts on the show in general? Let me know in the comments down below. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit like on this video and to subscribe for more videos like this coming soon, but until then, later.